Hey guys, this is Shane from Echo Sourix here, and in this video we're going to look at how you can create Grey style vocal chops. So this is in support of our newest sound set and sample pack, Grey Area. Now Grey, they do some really interesting things in terms of how they process and just approach vocal chops. They've kind of reinvented that wheel, if you will. And we're going to be looking at how to create that sound step by step over one of the demos from Grey Area in this video. Now I made this vocal chop just for this video, so this isn't one that's included in the pack because I wanted to kind of have to start from scratch to show you guys this process in a more thorough way. So, quick caveat, if you're trying to get a sound that is really similar to the Grey character, the Grey vibe in terms of the vocal chops, you need to be working with the actual acapella in your track. If your track doesn't have an acapella, it might be a little bit more difficult to find an acapella that will work because you're going to be ultimately messing around with the formants. And if you have to pitch something way up or way down to get it to sit in the key of your track, when you do go to manipulate the formants, it's going to make it sound less Grey-like, but it'll still be cool nonetheless and more unique, but it won't have that exact character or vibe. So that being said, let's dive into Logic and get started. Right, so that's a pretty big difference. So the first step, or this is step 0 rather, is make sure that your vocal chop that you're working with, whether it's a sample from Grey Area or you're working with, creating your own chops or your own acapella even, make sure that you're not coming in too hot. So if you're working with a loop and you're like, well, I already recorded it, you can turn it down. You can actually turn down the volume of the audio by what's typically referred to as clip gain. I know Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, they'll have this. I'm assuming most DAWs have this on some level. So it's a bit different than just turning down the volume on your actual track slider or fader in the DAW. In Logic, the clip gain's over here. And you'll notice if I turn down the clip gain, the actual audio regions on the region in my timeline here is actually getting smaller. That's telling us that's getting quieter, right? The amplitude's decreasing. So make sure you're not coming in too hot. That's kind of step 0. Now the first step is I applied some format shifting, and I did this in Melodyne. So I just took this chop right here. This is the raw unprocessed chop. I imported it into Melodyne, and I just dragged down the formants, and then I bounced that in place to get this. Anytime you format shift and go lower with the format, it smudges, it kind of makes the vocal less unintelligible. And that's a huge part of the Grey vocal chop sound. It's not super noticeable. The attack isn't really in your face. So that's a big part of it, right? And you can use other plugins to do that. You could use Soundtoy's little Alter Boy. You could use any type of pitch shifting, sampler that you might be using. As long as it has some type of format shift, you can use it. Each one will have a slightly different character and slightly different flavor, so mess around with it, you might be surprised. One drop, you can try using one plugin that format shifts, then the next drop, try using the other, and it'll sound a little bit different. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to carve out some of the unwanted, the pesky frequencies that are going to make it harder to mix your vocal once you add all the rest of the processing. So it's going to be low frequencies and some of the high frequencies, depending on the vibe or character. The high, that's completely to taste, but I will say you're going to most of the time want to take out some of the lows because you're going to be adding distortion, some reverb, and it can make it harder to mix with your low end instruments like your kick and your bass. And I'm using FabFilter Pro Q2 to do that. So the next thing that I ran, the next effect that I loaded up on this chain was FabFilter Saturn. This is a distortion saturation plugin. You can use any saturation distortion plugin that you want. Isotope Trash, your stock DAW. You could use FabFilter Saturn, of course. Soundtoy's Decapitator. There are so many of them, but let's listen to what this is doing. Right, so just gentle saturation. You can, of course, mess around with different types in the distortion plugin that you're using. You'll get different results. But for this specific drop, I thought the gentle saturation sounded pretty good. This is a very important step. This is the reverb. This is what is going to kind of combine with the format shift that you did in the first step to really make the vocal chop and the syllables that you're hearing less make it more unintelligible and less noticeable what the actual vocal chop is saying or trying to say. So what you do is load up a reverb plugin that you like working with. I'm working with Chroma Reverb in Logic 10. You could use any third-party reverb plugin. They all have a slight different character when you do this. It's kind of crazy, and I'll actually show you that here. So what you do is it's 2 steps. Take the decay and the distance down to pretty much as low as it'll go. You want a really short reverb, and you want 100% wet. So check this out. So it sounds like that. Now I'm going to load up another reverb plugin just to show you how doing that exact same thing has a different character or vibe. So I just loaded up the exact same plugin. That's not right at all. Let's go and load up FabFilter Pro R. I'm going to take the mix up to 100, which it already is. Let's take the decay rate down, and let's take the space down and make sure that the Chroma Reverb is off. So check this out. That's FabFilter Pro R. Here's Chroma Reverb. Right, so you can use really any type of reverb plugin. So let's go back to Chroma Reverb for this. All right, so now that you've gotten really the most important steps out of the way, you've format shifted, you've applied some saturation, some distortion, and some very short reverb. Now you can kind of just color things to taste. Now, the order in which you do this also has an effect on the sound. For instance, if I take, let's get the FabFilter Pro R out of there. If I take the distortion and put that after the reverb, it's going to sound a little bit different. Right, so it really just depends on the taste, the flavor that you're going for, and different plugins, different settings are obviously going to affect this. So next I ran into one more instance of the FabFilter Pro Q2, and this was just to reduce any frequencies that I brought back in using the distortion. Right, and then I used the RVox compressor from Waves to slam this. Because remember, I came in quite quiet, so I had some room to kind of squash the vocal. And you don't have to do that. That's kind of a bonus step. And then finally, I added a couple buses of aux sends of some reverb, just to actually bring in like a tail of reverb. Right, because our first instance of reverb is just kind of smudging out the reverb. It's that very short decay with 100% wet. So this is what we have. Alright guys, so that sums up this video. If you have any questions or comments, post them and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you guys are interested in a Grey style pack that comes with just an insane amount of content, check out Grey Area V.1. The link will be in the description. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.